Hello and welcome to Bloke on the Range. This might seem like a pointless topic. What is the difference between a P14 and a US model 1917? Because they're basically the same rifle. Now, I'll quickly go through the obvious differences between them, but what I find the most interesting, particularly as someone with an engineering background, is the invisible differences, the differences under the hood. Now, the big one, obviously, and I'm presuming that you've at least got some vague understanding of the two rifles. If not, please go and watch our P14 episode, go and watch C and Arsenal's episode on it. And I promise you that there's stuff in here that isn't in C and Arsenal's, because it's the sort of under the hood thing that really gets my swanicles revolving. So basically, this rifle 303, this rifle 3006. So the basic changes are linked to the caliber. So if Il Chapo there can bring the camera in, if we look under the hood here, so the P14's magazine is all set up very cleverly to deal with 303. This was not originally designed for 303. It's a bodge job. It's basically, how can we get 303 to feed out of this platform that we had for the 276 Enfield cartridge. So we've got various ribs in the magazine box to try and guide the cartridges properly, and then the magazine follower fits in them. There's a lip on the front there. There's a vague attempt. There's a lip on the front and a lug there, and that lug interacts with that rib at a vague attempt at anti-tilt, and it sort of anti-tilts, but nowhere near as well as a Lee Enfield magazine, which was built from the ground up as a 303 magazine. On the M1917, it's just a plain rectangular box, and the follower is extremely plain. For the obvious reason that the cartridge is extremely plain. Now on the top side, because of the difference in cartridges, the feed lips here in the P14 are much wider than they are in the M17, because 303 rimmed, wider, obvious. There's also changes in the bolt, and this is where it gets a bit complicated, and I may have to insert a couple of pictures, because if we take the two bolts out, these are kind of stiff. The extractors are quite different. The M17 extractor is quite broad and much more Mauser type pattern, and the P14s are much more Lee Enfield type. And if you're noticing anything, that there's no difference in this bolt face, because this is actually a P14 bolt with an M17 extractor on it, and it seems to have gone through the US refurb, because the British P14 bolts are polished and shiny like this one, and this one has been Parkerized. So this has been put in, it appears, during the US refurb of this rifle. Now I'll insert a picture showing an actual M17 bolt where that shroud there is a bit wider so that it fits the cartridge. This works absolutely fine though. It's interesting, this is a Winchester P14 bolt in the just under 50,000 serial number range. So the sights are rescaled for the different ballistics. Not surprising, really. And it's sometimes reported that the battle sight on the M17 is 450 yards instead of 400, but I've had it out at 300, shooting with the sight set to 400 so that I can take a 6 o'clock hold on the target. And this shoots to exactly the same point of impact on the battle sight, and flipped up and set to 400. So I've confirmed that it is in fact 400 yards. Now, otherwise, if you just scan the camera along, there's really nothing different or special going on other than the size of the hole and the rifling. it's all basically the same stuff from there. Now, there's obviously on the US rifles, there's no frivolities like dial sights, long range sights, or anything like that. That was all obsolete and dispensed with. Now, what are we not seeing? What we're not seeing is tolerancing and interchangeability. The P14s from factory to factory, it was an absolutely hit the fan crash program. The three factories, the Winchester, the main Remington plant, and the Eddystone plant, which was also run by Remington, were all running slightly different technical packages because they didn't get served a complete one at the start, and apparently the example rifles weren't all quite the same because it was an absolutely rush bodge job. And so there are interchangeability issues between the factories, between early ones and late ones in the same factories, and all sorts. This was something that the US insisted on, was interchangeability. However, a document has turned up fairly recently that got put on a researchers forum on Facebook, which showed that in fact the first 100 and I think it's 109,000 anyway, just over 100,000 M17 rifles produced by the Winchester factory up to the 2nd of January 1918 were not considered properly interchangeable with the other factories. So they were retained stateside for training. And then later Winchester ones and the other factories ones went to France for the war. I find this very fascinating, but it was something that the US government, because I mean, US manufacturing has always been far more about interchangeability than British manufacturing, less hand fitting, and also by that stage it was a mature project. It had been going on since about 1915. There were a few years in, so the US government could impose a much greater degree of interchangeability because it wasn't such a rush. It was a case of change the caliber, all you factories make it to this set of specs, and I find that fascinating. Now, in terms of interchangeability, we think of it today as you can build your own AR-15 if you're in the States by ordering all sorts of different parts from different manufacturers on Brownells, and you can get them all into your house, and the barrel extension will screw onto the barrel, and the bolt head, and it will all go together, and then you run a go and a no-go gauge through it, and it should all be absolutely bang on without any hand fitting or extra machining at all. This is a modern idea. This is modern interchangeability. Back in the day, they would tolerate a little bit more hand fettling than we would these days. But by the standards of the day, the US 1917s, aside from their first 100,000 odd from Winchester, were considered properly interchangeable by the standards of the day, whereas the P14s weren't. So there you go. I hope that was at least vaguely interesting. It's the sort of thing that floats my boat. If it floats yours, all to the good. Thank you so much to Coup du Tir for hosting us here. Thank you, Stephen, for use of your rifle, and thanks very much to our patrons who make it possible for us to take days off work and come down here and film. If you haven't become a patron already, please consider doing so, and see you later. Bye.